I am Frank Kane, and this is Frankly Speaking, the show where we dig deep into the insights of some of the most important policymakers and thought leaders in the world. Today, I'm joined via Zoom from Germany by Ugur Sahin, founder and chief executive of BioNTech, the firm which, in partnership with Pfizer, developed the first vaccine against the COVID-19 virus, which is now being rolled out around the world. Mr. Sahin, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
It's a pleasure, Frank. Thank you for the invitation.
It's great to have you. Let me ask from the very beginning, the world wants to know the answer to this question. The vaccination program is being progressively rolled out, yet there are still a high and growing number of cases in the world. Tell me, when will your vaccine begin to have a noticeable effect on our daily lives? When will we and the world economy begin to get back to normal again?
So it indeed depends on the rollout. So we have this magic number of about 60 to 70% of people being vaccinated to start to see a herd immunity. But we are already starting to see the first effects of the vaccinations, with countries starting vaccination in elderly people. So the first effects is that the hospitalizations are dropping in the vaccinated people, and that's the first very important aspect. So get a reduction of hospitalization and mortality, and later on get also a better control of infections.
Okay, it's being rolled out here in the Middle East, where I am. But challenges remain, don't they? Logistics, distribution, and in some cases, persuasion, simply asking people or persuading people to have it. How can we overcome these kind of challenges?
Yeah, we have to continue to communicate. We have different type of views in people. Of course, people are different, and it is important to show the data supporting the benefits of the vaccine. So we showed the phase 3 data, which is among the largest phase 3 clinical trials ever done for a novel vaccine, with more than 44,000 subjects participating, where we have shown that the vaccine is safe and well tolerated with the typical vaccine effects. Now the vaccine is being rolled out to tens of millions of people in the meantime, and we are getting more and more longer safety data. So we are getting safety data not only for 2 months, but for 4 months and 6 months, and we need to continue to communicate that. And on the other side, we have also to communicate the benefits that we are seeing, for example, reduction of hospitalizations. And I expect that also very soon we will see publications about dropping infection rates, coming out. And this needs to be communicated in a transparent fashion, and this could help to convince people.
One of the challenges I mentioned there was distribution, and this has been uneven around the world, hasn't it? I know that this is not a medical scientific question, but do you think that the way the vaccine has been distributed around the world has been fair?
So fairness is always a question of logistics, and it's also of accessibility. So our goal when we started to develop this vaccine, and this is in the center of our hearts, is to make our vaccine available worldwide to everyone who needs that. And the strategy that we use is to develop a vaccine is really to come up with the shortest possible development timelines. So before we started to develop the vaccine, people expected that it would take at least 2 years until a vaccine is approved, and we did that in 11 months. And we started to manufacture, and our vaccine comes with at the beginning with a challenge that we have a vaccine which has to be kept at minus 70 degrees, and is not yet suitable for example, supply to all regions on the planet. but we are working on a better conditions. So we most recently published that we can also store at -20, and we will continue to work on that. And our aim is really to make our vaccine available, 2 billion doses and maybe even more in 2021, including, of course, not only developed countries, but also developing countries.
Interesting. You have preempted one of my questions there, because there has been some debate, hasn't there, about the -70 degrees centigrade figure. What is the position now? Can your vaccine be transported and distributed at rather less than that now?
Yeah, we have collected data, and we now have data supporting storage at -20 degree.
-20.
-20 at least for 2 weeks. We are continuing to collect further data, and I'm optimistic that that the storage time will continue to increase. We are working already on the next generation vaccine, which will be even more stable, also at 2 to 8 degrees. We expect to announce results about this vaccine in the upcoming 2 months, and maybe in the second half of 2021. We will have the rollout of this new generation formulation, which would make things even more easier.
Right. You are in Germany, but I guess you have a global view, don't you? Tell me, frankly speaking, how do you think the Middle East has handled the distribution issue with the vaccine? How do you think the Middle East is doing in the battle against the pandemic?
It is difficult for me to assess that from my position. I am really more focused here on the development of the vaccine, on the manufacturing, on the clinical issues, in making the vaccine more stable in processes in that, and the regulatory work. My work ends with really requesting and asking that we get approvals, or authorization in all the countries, of course, including countries in the Middle East. And this is progressing well. I think the governments, Middle East governments, are working very closely with us to get first approvals of the vaccine. This is, of course, the key aspect, and we will ensure that the vaccine is transported and delivered when approved. Everything what comes thereafter, I don't have a transparent view to.
Do you have any say over manufacture, location of manufacture? Because it would seem to make sense to me to actually locally manufacture the vaccine in some countries like Saudi Arabia, where there is a big population who want the vaccine. Does this fall under your remit? Can you tell us whether there are any licenses going ahead?
Yes, we do, of course, but we have to understand that manufacturing, setting up a manufacturing process for such a vaccine, usually requires more than 1 year. So we most recently acquired a company in a factory in Germany. So the factory was from Novartis in Marburg, and we acquired the company in October, November last year, and we started to do the technology transfer for existing high-tech manufacturing facility. And it took us, even though this is a high-tech manufacturing facility with all the people in, with processes, with some of the processes already established, it took us about 8 months until we will get out the first vaccines from Marburg. So this is really the minimal time that would be required, and it does not help in the early phase of the pandemic to set up new factories in somewhere else. Every factory that we are now starting to consider will help us only in mid-2022. So the first goal is really to ensure that we bring in everyone who can help us in our network, manufacturing network, and we accomplished now in Germany in Belgium to get 13 partners in, helping us with different steps. These are lipid suppliers, these are raw material suppliers, these are fill and finish providers, and so on. We have now a number of new partners, and this helped us to increase from the originally anticipated 1.3 billion doses in 2021 to come up now with 2 billion doses. Yeah, so this is really effective. Doing it centered around the key places, and then of course considering for the future to go into partnerships and prepare everyone for the next pandemic or for the variants. Yeah, but this will only help this will not help before next year.
I see. It's a long process to set up this manufacturing facility, but you have in mind the next pandemic already, do you? Perhaps the region, the Middle East, would be a good location for some kind of facility looking ahead to the next pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. It is. So what this pandemic taught us is very, very clear. So this was somehow expected by experts since more than 20 years that this could happen, and it happened, and we were not well prepared. The world was not well prepared to that. And this is a bad pandemic, but it's not the worst possible pandemic. We really need to now use the opportunity to get prepared to the potential next, maybe even worse pandemic. And this requires manufacturing capacity. That's one of the most urgent aspects. But this also requires further development of technology. The messenger RNA technology might be the most suitable future technology for fighting pandemics. This is one of the lessons that we learned.
I understand. Okay, where I'm speaking to you from, the United Arab Emirates has also a fairly good record. A high proportion of people have been vaccinated, including, I must tell you myself, I've had 2 doses of your vaccine, so thank you very much for that. But I'm wondering now whether I should have waited a bit longer because the new variants that are coming in, maybe they won't be affected by the vaccine that I've already had. What do you think? Should I have waited longer?
No, I don't think that this makes any sense to wait longer. So we have to fight the existing pandemic and the variants that are now most frequent in Near East is the B117, for which we have already shown that it is equally neutralized by our vaccine, which was produced against the parental virus. Yeah, and we have also evaluated the South African variant. Yeah, we see for the South African variant some reduced titers, but still high titers, and we expect that our vaccine will still work also against the South African variant, but we don't have yet data. It is most important to really understand that the most important aspect is to get as many as possible people vaccinated as soon as possible. This is the best way to protect yourself and to protect others.
I understand that this isn't a competition, it isn't a race, but there are a number of rival vaccines around, aren't there? Are you in a position to give any opinion on the efficacy of the others? I'm thinking of Sputnik V, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Chinese vaccine, which is also in wide use here in the Middle East. Can you give any view on those?
Yeah, you are completely right. We are not. This is not a race. This is. If it's a race, it's a race against the virus. I'm really happy, and I had predicted that we will need multiple vaccine developers to participate and to ensure that everyone on the planet is able to get a vaccine, and this is happening. And it is really encouraging to see that this is and that different type of partnership partnerships has been established between companies and governmental organizations, between international companies, between companies and other type of governments. And it is wonderful to see that all kind of international collaborations help to come up not only with one vaccine, but with multiple vaccines and vaccine candidates. And the data, of course, are published, and the experts are frankly discussing the data, and this should provide confidence for every vaccine for which data are provided in a transparent fashion. So it's not only about the quality of the data, but also the quality, the transparency of the data sets which are provided.
Let me ask you about the relationship with Pfizer, because this is interesting from a business point of view, isn't it? How is that partnership structured, and how did it come about? How did you manage to come to work with Pfizer rather than anybody else?
Yeah, so the partnership with Pfizer is one of, I would say it's an ideal partnership. It's a perfect partnership. So we had already a collaboration with Pfizer since 2018, working together on influenza vaccines. And we are a biotechnology company. We have 20 years, our scientists and my background is mRNA. Since 20 years. So we are technology developers, and we started to develop vaccine candidates already in January. Yeah, and when we saw that we have first vaccine candidates, we asked Pfizer whether they would like to join us in the development, and we established a partnership, and the partnership comes with combining strengths. Our strength is really developing the technology. Plus, we are immune experts. We are immune engineering experts. We really know how to instruct the immune system to get this wonderful immune responses, T-cell immune responses, antibody immune responses. Pfizer is a perfect organization which can develop phase 3 clinical trials, which has a global network for clinical trials, a global supply network, global regulatory network. So we combined our skills, and we are working together, driven by science. At the end of the day, we all want to accomplish the same. We want to develop the vaccine as soon as possible. We want to produce as much as possible vaccine amounts, and of course we want to have a safe and effective vaccine, and we accomplished that, and we are continuing to work together to get our vaccines rolled out.
Right. I read that your wife, who is BioNTech's chief medical officer, I thought this was a really good quote. She said that you are typical nerds. I believe that was in the Financial Times, which means that you are medical specialists, of course, but you must also by now be pretty business aware. How did you learn the executive arts as opposed to the medical arts?
Yeah, so by two factors. One is really common sense. Yeah, the way how we see the things is, if we can do something useful for humanity, and if we can do something useful for patients, and then it could be also a business. At the end of the day, the pharmaceutical business is about helping people. Yeah, so we are really driven by the fact that we want to help, and to reduce disease burden, and to reduce suffering. So that's what drives us. The second thing that we did is we understood our own limitations, and we understood that certain aspects should not be our core business, and we brought into the company fantastic people who are business people, who understand finances, who understand deal making, who understand business development, and we became a great team, and that is how things should work. It's always teamwork. It's about collaboration, understanding their own limitations, and letting others support you to accomplish a common goal.
There is also an entrepreneurial element here, isn't there? You are the son of immigrant parents in Germany, but you have had a profound impact on the world via your talents and via your chosen specialism. What lessons are there for young would-be entrepreneurs there, do you think, from your story?
First of all, I would always say you need to identify what you love. Yeah, it is about passion. Yeah. The second thing is we had always this clear vision, yeah, and understanding what we want to accomplish. And when we started our research, we knew that this is not going to happen in a few years. So we started more than 30 years ago with our research, yeah, and we had the vision to develop medicines for individual cancer patients, and we knew that we need to persist, yeah, and insist and continue. So this makes the recept. So do something where you are really interested and are passionate about. Do something useful, yeah, and then continue and show the persistence which is required to come up with great things. And the additional aspect is of course enable people to help you, yeah, along the path, and make friends and identify like-minded people who share the vision. Yeah, it's a number of aspects.
Okay. Let me ask you about philanthropy, because wealthy business people these days are increasingly giving away a lot of their money. What do you see as the role of philanthropy, especially in the medical field, in medical science and in treating disease on a global scale?
It is extremely important. We have to understand everyone can do something, yeah, and the way how we would like, for example, to position our company is to become a useful company, yeah, with a even philanthropic vision, yeah. At the end of the day, the question is how can we ensure that the things that we can do, yeah, are done in a way for the benefit of humanity. So that is really a question. It's not only about providing money and saying that's done, but really asking the question: what do we need to work? How can we work together to ensure that people wherever they live, yeah, could benefit from innovation? I don't see a clear reason why, for example, people living in Africa, yeah, should not benefit from modern cancer treatments. Yeah. So the question is really not only having a mission, but also understanding how this could be accomplished. And we should really ask the question together: how can we work together to make that possible? And that's for me some of the future goals, yeah, to really understand what are the limitations. Yeah, for me, for example, for the vaccine supply now, I really want to understand what is the limitation to make our vaccine available to people everywhere. I want to understand the hurdles and then identify with whom we could work together to overcome these hurdles and to make our vaccine available. It is also a practical question. Yeah,
I understand. Let me ask you finally about to go back to BioNTech's origins, because you did not begin as an organization to create vaccines against infectious diseases, did you? But rather to revolutionize the field of cancer immunotherapy. So is this still the ultimate goal for you? I mean, I guess I'm asking you, after this, you have done incredible things in the fight against COVID. After this, are you going to try to develop a cure for cancer?
Yes, definitely. And it is even more true today than it was last year. because the success now with our COVID-19 vaccine is of course transformative for the company, and we see that as a great opportunity and also obligation to even think in a bigger fashion about our vision and how we could accelerate our cancer programs and make it broader available.
Mr. Sahin, I think that that's an inspiring note on which to end. So I'm very grateful for your presence on Frankly Speaking this evening, and I'm grateful for your candid responses. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Frank. It was a great pleasure.